We are recording, so welcome. Let me share the presentation, and I'm hoping, because I have to sign every single person in, I'm hoping I can still do the presentation and sign anyone else who joins us in. That could be a technical challenge I will try and overcome. So let me try and share this with you. Can you all see the presentation?
Yep, I can.
Yep.
Fantastic. Great. So, yeah, Adria, can you see it in your car while Titsia drives at 70 miles an hour? Fantastic. Oh, joys of technology. So, welcome everybody to our Birds, Bats and Bioacoustics webinar, the first of the People's Park for Nature, where we get to find out who are the winners and losers across our 10 amazing sites of the People's Park for Nature who took part, and hopefully we can learn a little bit about like the value of collecting this data, really, and this information. Please do sort of say hi on the chat and post questions, and I'll try and answer them, or you can use the emojis if you want to kind of stop me and ask a question. But I don't think this presentation will take an hour, so there'll be plenty of time at the end for us to kind of have a chat through and answer any questions. I want to start off just by thanking, well, first of all, everybody who participated in the project across the 9 different sites. We put bioacoustic monitors in 10 locations at 9 sites. Thank you to all those who either part funded or completely funded the use of their monitors. And I also want to do a big shout out and a thank you to Engilata Foundation, who've not only funded this project but have given the People's Park for Nature kind of core funding this year, which is really helping us to do the things that we want to do. So I think you're all pretty familiar with the People's Park for Nature, but it's a new project, it's a new initiative. It's all about bringing together a community of people and places to protect nature, to connect people, to give people new opportunities to access land and to share spaces, and to restore the wild and encourage people to connect with it. So we currently have about 30 sites within the People's Park for Nature. The smallest is I think a window box in New Haven. The largest current site is Lawton Greenwood, which is a community-owned woodland which took part in this project. So it's a real mixture, some urban, some rural. And it's an absolute delight, and hopefully this project will kind of give you a feel for like how all of these different locations, gardens, campsites, different spaces kind of come together, although they're not necessarily linked geographically directly. They come together to help us to be able to protect nature and do the things that we want to do. So let's first of all meet the monitors. So we decided right at the beginning of the People's Park for Nature project, there's really, we try to collect information on the status of nature across the park, across these different sites. Now, obviously the park is growing all the time, new people and new places are getting involved, but we really wanted to try and gather some information early on. And a big part of the reason for this project is to actually work together to increase biodiversity across all of our sites, really, all of the places that we call our homes, our gardens, our workspaces, whatever they are. And to do that, we have to know how much nature is there in the first place. So we decided to hook up with this fantastic company, Carbon Rewild. They've been really helpful, and they rented us basically these small green bioacoustic monitoring devices for the month of halfway through April to halfway through May, so for 4 weeks, and we placed them at these 10 different locations. So you can see the boxes here. You can see James, who's one of the directors of the PPN, very happy to have that monitoring device in his garden. They're incredibly simple to use. It is literally a green box. You strap it to a tree or a fence post. There is a really easy to use switch at the bottom, and it says on and off. It's my kind of technology. So very, very simple. You put them on site, you switch them on in a place where hopefully nobody's going to mess around with them. You can just leave them to do their thing for the duration of the month. And you can set them up in different ways. The way that we set up our monitoring devices across all the sites was to do two things. We wanted to be able to record bird song and bird species, and we wanted to be able to record bats. And to do that, the box has to switch from one frequency to another. So what it does is it records bird song during the day, and then at night, for just 2 hours, I think it's 2 hours, it switches to a different frequency to record bat echolocations. So it's not recording bat echolocations all through the night. That's worth bearing in mind when we look at the data. It's only recording it for 2 hours of every night. Relatively small. I could just ask him to switch that's all right. Lovely, thank you so much. So that's how they work. Really, really simple, straightforward. Put them up, and then 4 weeks later, we collect them all up. We send them back to Carbon Rewild, and they analyze the data. They use some AI for that, but they also do it. They also have staff that check the information is accurate, and then they send us the results, which has been really fantastic. So, where did we actually put the bioacoustic monitors? The People's Park for Nature area that we work in is all across the lower Ouse Valley, Lewis district. And here you can see the actual sites. So they're quite well spread up and down the valley. So we had 180, you can cheer if you are at this particular location. So we had 180 Old Morling Way in Lewis, which is Brett and Haley's property. We had Lawson Greenwood, which is a community woodland. We had 2 sites on the Railway Land Nature Reserve in Lewis, run by the Railway Land Wildlife Trust. So we had the Heart of the Reeds, which is a reed bed area, and also a place called Chili Brook, which is kind of wet meadow. We had another site in Lewis, which is an urban area, which was 1 Buckwell Court. We had Tim's site, which is a secret campsite, and we had Manor Cottage, which is down in Westdean, and we had I can't pronounce this. Where's Andy? Balkydeer in Piltdown. Is that right, Andy? Have I pronounced it correctly? I think you're on mute, understandably.
Back on now?
Yeah.
Yeah, Balquidder.
Balquidder was a bit easier than I thought. Balquidder, yeah. Fantastic. Which is Andy's garden in Piltdown, and Hamsey Place as well, which is James's garden. So, and my garden as well in Barkham. So, real mixture of kind of gardens and larger spaces. So here are some of the images of some of the sites, just to show you kind of how varied they were, really. So we've got up the top left is part of the secret campsite, which is lovely kind of grassland and scrub area where some of the tents can be found. We put the monitor there. Below that is James's garden, which is a lovely sort of quite large, diverse garden. To the right is one of the gardens in Lewis, and to the far right another garden. At the bottom, in the middle, in the third from left is the kind of wet meadows at the Railway Land. To the left of that is an open area of woodland, which is at Lawson Greenwood. So a real kind of mixture of habitats. So I thought it'd be fun to begin with to hand out some awards to some of our kind of record breakers, because it's been a steep learning curve actually having these monitoring devices at these different sites. We really didn't know what to expect. And I think one of the things that has really surprised me is just how diverse the sites that might look certainly to my eyes, an ecologist, as very similar. But when you delve into the data, there are lots of overlaps, but there's also quite a lot of variety. So this is Hamsey Place. So this is James's garden, and it had by far the highest number of acoustic detections of any of the locations. So this is all of the bat echolocations and the bird calls combined, 17,453 recordings. So and no bird feeders either. Fantastic. Well done, James. You can give yourself a pat on the back. That's quite impressive.
Isn't it?
And really
a lot of noisy goldfinches and blackbirds. That's what I look at the numbers.
Absolutely that. And also really interesting that a garden tops the list when we've got, 3 nature reserve sites. We've got larger sites, for example. So well done you. Another record breaker is the Heart of the Reeds at the Railway Land in Lewes, Railway Land Nature Reserve. They were the only site to record all 3 species of pipistrelle. So there's a very hard to tell apart. So you've got soprano, common pipistrelle, and Narthusius pipistrelle, of which they only had 1. That's the rarest. But they were recording all 3, which is really, really fantastic. But check this out. So if you look at the number of acoustic identifications of bats at the Railway Land, and you see this aerial shot of the Railway Land, so I would say it's a perfect site for bats. Lots of open water, you've got lots of woodland, you've got grassland, it's perfect. They've got about 400 recordings of bats, okay, on at the Heart of Reeds. However, one Buckwell Court, an urban small garden in Lewes, recorded nearly double that number of bat recordings. I think that's absolutely incredible. So over 800, pushing 850 different recordings. So double what we saw at the Heart of the Reeds, which was the 2nd highest total, by the way, of any of the sites. It's a small urban garden. It's absolutely fantastic to try. I think we should look into that and try and unpick that. What's happening here? Are there some really important roost sites very close to this particular Keith's garden at 1 Buckwell Court? We don't know, but fantastic to see. Well done, Keith. Brett, you can put your hands up in the air on this one. I guess it is in Lamport, Brett. Yes. So this is Brett's garden, a small garden. He said to me before we put the monitor up, he said, "I've never seen a bat." I think you said you've never seen a bat in the garden, but I think there were at least 3 species bombing around in the garden. But what was really great is that Brett recorded 9 red or amber listed bird species. So these are species which are endangered. Their populations are declining quite rapidly. And so that's cause for concern. So great to see, well, it's bad news, but it's great to see that an urban garden actually has, as many of these species as any of our more rural or larger protected area sites. And so it has real value as a place to try and protect some of these fast declining species. So nice one, Brett. Keep up the good work.
It would be handy with some of them bits to possibly drop in like where those things are on a map, so other people could see it, because I think that brings home that sort of element of it being really rural a little bit more. Maybe for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as we can gather more data, and I have to say that Carbon Rewild are improving the quality of the sort of interface that they have, that we can all log into and view all of the information. You can see that they're plugging in new bits of information all the time. So hopefully we can analyze these data in multiple layers as we gather more information. Balquidir. Andy, you said to me last night, we haven't got anything, a bit disappointing, we haven't got anything special. I'm throwing that back at you, Andy, because you are the night specialists over there in Piltdown. If you want to see a tawny owl, I definitely recommend going there. You had an incredible 964 tawny owl recordings, which is more than 8 of the 10 other sites combined. So nearly every site recorded tawny owl. I think all but 1 recorded tawny owl, but most of them were below 100. And yours is nearly 1,000. So that's really quite impressive. Tim, at the Secret Campsite, you were 2nd on this list with 703 tawny owl records. So this is the number of times that vocalization was recorded. So what do you think of that, Andy?
Amazing, yeah. I mean, I think it's because we've got a big field between us and the woods, and I think they're going out there every night. You can hear them every night, yeah.
Do you? Do you hear them a lot?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you definitely got more than most of us have, and certainly way more than I have in my garden. Congratulations on that. over to Jesse down in Westdean at Manor Cottage. You were the only garden to have singing Firecrest, which is really, really rather special. And this is Britain's smallest bird, along with the goldcrest, weighs about as much as a 20p piece. But I had to put 2 pictures in because they're absolutely stunning birds. If it's singing at this time of year, very good chance that they're actually breeding. So wonderful that you had that in your garden. Firecrest it's a bit of an indicator of climate change, to be honest, because firecrests were a really, really rare breeding bird probably 20 years ago. And every year, particularly in southern England, but spreading north, there are more and more firecrest breeding. So it used to be that when someone saw a firecrest, there'd be like 200 twitchers turn up to have a look at it. Now, luckily for you, in your garden, not so much. So it's something we would expect to see more of, hopefully, as we continue with this monitoring project. But fantastic that you managed to record firecrest down there. Well done. Tim at the Secret Campsite, you won't be surprised to hear, as it is heavily used in your marketing material, I know, my friend, you had the wonderful sound of nightingales recorded, although the monitor actually really struggled to pick up the sound of nightingale, which I'm really surprised. So originally, when the recordings came, the information came back, it wasn't mentioned, and I had to contact Carbon Rewild and said, but I've been to Tim's campsite. I literally heard nightingales all night long. And he went back through the data and he said, yeah, you're right. It's there, but it's quite distant. So I think because of where we positioned the monitor, which was only across the field, wasn't it, Tim, from where one of the nightingales was singing, but it was far enough that it kind of struggled a little bit to pick up. But Tim, have you had a good season for nightingales at the Secret Campsite, do you think?
Yes. it's been really good. We've had 3 males actually in and around the site, so it's been really good. Oh, like amazing season for that. And Sam Lee, who does a lot of the well, you know, Sam, who does the singing with nightingales, he spent a lot of time in the railway track that goes between the 2 areas of the campsite because they were so good there. So it's been brilliant.
Oh, fantastic. It feels like it's been a really good season, actually, in this area in general for nightingales. It's been a bumper year, I think.
Yeah.
Which is great because it's a bird in such horrible, steep decline. Wonderful. So congratulations on that. And then, yeah, Lawton Greenwood. So we put one of the monitors. Hi, Chris.
Hello there. I thought I should make an appearance at this point.
That is good timing. So I 2 things to mention to you then I think you'll be aware of already. So one of them is this incredible number of Chiffchaffs that you had recorded at 6,839.
We capturing Chiffchaffs we were aware of, but not quite the quantity. The quantity, we were surprised, actually. I don't think there are any shocks there in the data, but just the quantity of activity was brilliant because it was just reassured us that we weren't imagining things.
Yeah, that's wonderful, isn't it? And I guess we can't say that each time there's a record of a bird, you know, that's an indicator of density. We can't say that. It could just be one bird that's very loud and just cuts things all the time, but it is likely to suggest that, at least. So guessing here that kind of open area that you've got surrounded by pine and other deciduous trees is just perfect. So I'm guessing there are probably several pairs, and yeah, the highest density across the tent.
Yeah, and I was pleased because you had nightjars as well, and we were like going because we've heard them, but it's been rare, so it's actually nice to have the evidence of lots of recordings. So thank you. That was brilliant to see that.
That's fantastic, Chris. Is that are you seeing nightjars at Lawton Greenwood because of the change of management, do you think, because some of the work that you've been doing?
We'd like to think so. I mean, it could be a coincidence. You could never be 100% sure, but it's been I think it's been a decade or long. There's other people that know exactly when they were last heard, but it's been a while.
Oh, wow.
And then they started sort of being regularly heard after the area was cleared. So we're hoping that some of the work we're doing to vary the habitat is having an effect. But you know what it's like. You can never be 100% sure. You couldn't prove it in court, could you?
Maybe with the bioacoustic monitor you can.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. That's great. And so exciting. It's such a special and strange bird. You see it in the picture here. They have this strange habit of, rather than perching across a branch, perching along a branch. It's absolutely incredible birds. Wonderful. And then we don't have anybody here, unfortunately, from the railway land, but a really big surprise, and the only wading bird that I think was recorded across the 10 sites was this ringed plover, which is on the Chili Brook wetland area. And unfortunately, that particular monitor only lasted 2 weeks. We're pretty sure that one of the cows that was grazing in the field rubbed against the post and knocked the switch from on and off on, I think, is it the 2nd of May? So we only got 2 weeks of data, but you can see that not many recordings each day, but quite frequently. But maybe they're feeding in this area and breeding somewhere else locally. You've got the Cockshoot stream, which is obviously a new piece of habitat nearby. And interestingly, at this particular time, the Railway Land Reserve, the Wildlife Trust had to close some of this area off to the public because of some issues around an invasive lichen which gets into the waterways. I'm wondering if that reduction in human traffic might have just created a bit enough kind of quiet space, because ring plovers are very vulnerable to disturbance, which is why they're doing so badly, because they nest a lot on shingle beaches, for example, but with people on beaches and dog walkers, they tend to get disturbed. And so that's a really interesting one. We'll have to try and explore more, because it's a red data book species as well. So kind of running through the general data then on birds and bats, we recorded 56 species of birds, 106,000 actual recordings. So it's a lot of data, even just on this kind of first sweep, to be able to kind of trawl through. You can see that the commonest species here were blackbird, chiffchaff, wood pigeon, robin, and wren. Not too much of a surprise here. I think what is kind of quite shocking in a way is the number of species recorded. If you look at this donut here, which are either red or amber listed, and I think that just shows it's really just a symbol of the status of nature in the UK at the moment. Really, I would say. So the number we've got 13 amber listed and 9 red listed bird species, 31 green listed, but also 3 other. That refers to species that are not considered native to the UK. So pheasant, for example, would be on that list. And this is the total number of bird species identified per site, which or across all of the 10 sites, which again I think tells a really interesting story. I've kind of categorized these as either an urban garden, a rural garden, Tim's campsite, and then Lawton Greenwood and the Railway Land are effectively kind of nature reserves. They're protected for nature. I think what's really great is that there's not a huge amount of difference between them, which in a way is quite a surprise. Our 2 urban gardens sit a little bit lower in terms of number of species, but not hugely so. And some of our rural gardens are actually kind of out-competing our nature reserve sites in terms of biodiversity based on just this 1 month of data. So I think it just really shows, a bit like our incredible number of bat sightings we saw at Buckwell Court, it shows that no matter how big or how small the area of land you own, whether it's an urban or rural site, you could have something really special, and you're definitely going to have something that's really worth protecting. And I think that gives us all a lot of hope for what we can do. And this is something that really, really surprised me as well. So every site except one, I think there were maybe 2 sites that had blackbird as the most commonly recorded species, but every single site, apart from that, actually had a different species of bird as the most abundant at that site, which to me, I think that's really surprising. So we've got song thrush, wood pigeon, cormorant, goldfinch, robin, blackbird, reed warbler, chiffchaff, and blue tit. Mostly common species, but it just goes to show there's a lot more diversity, I think, across the park than we might kind of at first anticipate, which is really wonderful. This again shows the total number of species, but now we can see across each of the sites the number of red and amber listed, so these species which are in decline. We can see that absolutely every site has at least some species which are red and amber listed. So every site has species of concern. So there's work for us to do there to try and protect those species and improve our habitats, as well as for everything else, of course. Slightly variable, but they, broadly quite similar. So if we look at those kind of red listed species, this is just the red list. So these are the ones that are under greater threat, not the amber. I haven't looked at the amber listed ones. So they are cuckoo, greenfinch, house sparrow, missel thrush, starling, common swift, skylark, ringed plover, nightingale, and, as we discussed earlier, herring gull. So all of those are on the red list, and they are present across our 10 locations. So I thought it'd be interesting to look at those species and just ask the question, what are their dietary requirements? So what do they need to be able to survive from a foraging perspective? And is there any commonality there? Because if there is, it maybe tells us something about our priorities to protect these species across the People's Park. And there are some. So these are the results. So invertebrates are absolutely key. 9 of the 10 species rely heavily on insects, worms, or other invertebrates, at least seasonally. Many have mixed diets, so they shift from animal to plant-based food. They're omnivores. Insect-rich habitats are vital for breeding, and especially for feeding chicks. So you see this cuckoo here, they're heavily reliant on large moth caterpillars to survive. And so things like willow, really important for them. And then seed and fruit use is common outside of the breeding season for these species. There are, of course, outliers across our red list species. So for herring gulls, they actually have a very broad diet, including marine life and human refuse. They're highly adaptable, which is why it's kind of such a shock that they've declined so much. Common swifts have a unique aerial feeding, feeding on a lot of insects. So they need good aerial populations of things like spiders, for example, tiny spiders you often see in the air. And then ringed plover, of course, we need to find out more about that, but it's a coastal forager, reliant on intertidal habitats, and very different in its habitat requirements to the others. So there are some outliers here. So what might we do across the park to protect these species? We could enhance these insect-rich habitats. So we could look at more wildflower meadows, more hedgerows, more wetlands, ponds, reduce pesticide use. We could support seasonal food sources. So thinking about seed-rich field margins or berry-bearing shrubs and native hedgerows. We could look at make sure there's lots of diverse habitat across the park, which we currently do have. So things like more scrub, grassland, woodland edge, and then of course our urban green spaces play an important role as well. We could encourage lots of structural variety, such as tall herbs, rough grassland, bare ground, leaf litter, and varied vegetation layers. And then think about reducing disturbance for things like ringed plovers. So moving on to our bats, I'm not an expert on bats, but just to kind of share the information, it was fantastic to see. So we recorded 8 species of bats across our 10 sites. There are only 17 breeding species of bat in the whole of the UK, some of which ranges do not extend to this area. So 8 species is really good. It'd be great to see what happens in the autumn when we try this again. And so there are images of all of them here. So if you look at the top left, that's a ceratine. To the right of that is a Narthusius pipistrelle. And then below the ceratine is a Brandt's bat. To the right of that is a Natterer's bat. And then bottom left, crazy long ears of the brown long-eared bat. Very proud that my garden was the only place to have that at the moment. And then you've got the Narthusius and the common pipistrelles in those small images. And then finally on the bottom right-hand side is a noctule. So noctule and ceratines are the 2 really large species of bat, which were seen across the sites. Here you can see how abundant they were. So not really surprised that we see our 2 pipistrelle species as the most commonly cited, particularly common pipistrelle, about double the number of soprano pipistrelles. But then there were noctules, 49 reports of that, ceratine 9, so that's the 2 large species. Then there were the 3 Narthusius pipistrelles. I think they were all in the heart of the reeds, but I have to check that. Brandt's bat, Natura's bat, and the 1 brown long-eared bat. So really, really great. And here, Carbon Rewild gave us some information on what their feeding preferences are for these different species of bats. So in this kind of disc graphic, which you can see if you have access to their platform, they've shown the species in the dark blue here, which are the ones of all of the species that were recorded across the sites and the things that they eat. So I've had a quick look at that to try and see if there are kind of priorities. And I've compared the species that we saw within the park across the 10 sites with species that weren't present. Is there a difference between their feeding preferences? And there is. Basically, the bat species that we're picking up are generally, they're generalists. They're often feeding on small insects such as mosquitoes, good news for us, aerial insects, but they're also feeding on things like flying ants, which suggests that they're often feeding in pasture land, for example, where there's dung and beetles. So that's interesting. What these species are not feeding on so much, but the species that are absent from our area would feed on a lot are moths. So if we wanted to encourage more bat species, we might try and work to increase the number of moths that we have across the sites, and also caddisflies. So I thought it'd be interesting to look at what are the requirements for those 2 groups of species. So for moths, we could plant more night-scented and native wildflowers. White flowers particularly attract moths, for example, and think about trees that are often their food plants, such as oak, hawthorn, nettles and grasses. We can really think a lot more about reducing artificial light, which has a big impact on moths. I need to buy some curtains for my house. I really need to sort that out. LEDs are not good for them. Thinking about motion sensors, for example, or warmer light bulbs when we have to use them to reduce artificial light. Then we can encourage more leaf litter, longer grass, more dead wood, all really good for moths. My pond, which I built as a bit of a beaver pond with lots of wood around the edge, every single evening and most of the day, it's like it's covered in fairies dancing across the pond, because there are these tiny white moths. I've never seen this normally on a pond. Tiny white moths, about at least 20 every night, that are just fluttering over it and most of the day. And I'm sure that's just because there's lots of dead rotting wood around the pond, which has really made a difference. And then thinking obviously about avoiding pesticides and excessive tidiness. So those are things that really help moths, which could bring in some more bat species. Caddisflies, also known as mayflies, they're the sort of inspiration for fly fishing, those incredible, fly fishing things that fishermen make to be able to fish for things like trout and salmon. And see them pictured here on the right-hand side. They need really clean freshwater habitats. Could be still, or it could be running water. Varied aquatic vegetation, native vegetation, and then not too much kind of over management. So every time we dig another pond, we could really be helping mayflies and therefore bats. So that's really, really exciting. So I thought it'd be interesting just to finish off with, to think about, I have to say, just to kind of précis this, to think about management based on this very, very early amount of data is probably going too far. But I just wanted to give you an idea that this data is really, really valuable and incredibly helpful. And if we continue to monitor and expand this bioacoustic monitoring process, we are going to get to some points where we can get some really, really valuable information. Hopefully it can help us to make the right decisions to protect nature, and frankly, even be able to get funding applications in, because we can tell people that we're hopefully being successful across these sites, across these places for nature, and we hope to see improvements. So talking about management plans now is very, very early. I just wanted to give you an idea of what data actually does. It does get you thinking about these kind of potential priorities. So we've looked at some of our red list bird species. We've looked at the bat species that we have and the bat species that are also kind of missing across the People's Park for Nature. locations. What would a management plan look like, maybe, to protect these species and their habitat? So we've listed the birds, the bats, but also these kind of priority invertebrates, potentially the caddisflies and the moths. So we could enhance invertebrate-rich habitats to support birds and bats, support seasonal food sources. So, you know, how can we encourage more seed and berry plants for invertebrates? We can think about diversifying habitats for nesting, roosting, and foraging. So that might include nest boxes, for example. We can think about mitigating some of the artificial threats, such as lighting, but also pesticides, big one for us, of course, in this area. And then what is the kind of targeted support for some of our specialist species, which might include nightjar, for example, swifts, already so much brilliant work going on in Lewis, of course, with swift supporters. Herring gulls, would you believe we're talking about those? And maybe even ring plover at the railway land, if that's a species that's spending more time there than we previously thought. So yeah, we can enhance these habitats. We can create more habitats that are great for invertebrates. We talked about this already. So native grasslands, wetlands, dead wood, less pesticides, low intensity grazing. These are the things that we can do more of. And I think that kind of repeats that information, really. Yeah. So we think about protecting key breeding and nesting sites, thinking about more dense scrub and woodland edge for our nightingales and missel thrushes, continue to look at a mosaic of habitats. That, I think that's one of the real strengths of this project. In our big and small spaces, we can really think about the difference between the habitats, and this data is really kind of showing up that difference. And then thinking about, yeah, diversity in terms of our planting, so tall herbs, rough grass, bare patches, varied canopy layers for woodland management, etc. And then finally, just sort of, we should probably look at expanding our monitoring program, really. So yes, we've got our bioacoustic monitoring. There's also an unbelievable number of fantastic monitoring projects already being undertaken. I know at the Railway Land and Lawton Greenwood, which are independent of what the People's Path for Nature do. It would be great to get more community involvement in some of our monitoring. We've got a new bat group just set up here in Barkham, for example, which is really exciting. Thinking about invertebrate sampling, so we could be really focused. We could focus on things like moths and caddisflies, because we know that we want to increase the numbers of those particular species, perhaps to target some of our red list birds or our bat species, and just trying to sort of track habitat and species biodiversity increase, which we fully expect to see across the People's Path for Nature. We could look at things like more bat and moth nights, bird surveys that we do together. Again, these are done brilliantly at the Railway Land at Lawton Greenwood already. That is that. I hope that was of interest. We are recording this, Helen, so you can always, an earlier hour of the day, you can catch up on some of this stuff. Helen, are you with us? It'd be great to hear your perspective from the Railway Land, because quite a few other people have managed to kind of chip in. Yeah, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Dylan, but I unfortunately missed most of that because I had a puncture.
Oh no!
I'm gutted to have missed the results, really. So I can't comment because I didn't hear most of it.
Oh, that's fine. Don't worry. It's all recorded. I'll send you the recording. You can watch it in the office. But yeah, there were some amazing things from the Railway Land. I mean, the two things that we highlighted were you had a ring plover, or maybe it was more than one, across the 2 weeks that we had recordings down at Chilly Brook. There was definitely a ring plover that was using that space, which is a red data book species. Really amazing. It's the only way that was recorded across any of the sites. I was mentioning to the others, and you might correct me on this, but I had a feeling that you maybe reduced the access down there a little bit during that time because of the invasive lichen species that you'd had. Is that right, or is that not correct?
With the azolla, yeah, we did. Yeah. We were certainly trying to, yeah.
That might have been a bit of a help, because ring plovers are really vulnerable to disturbance, so it might be having a bit more space that encourage
Right.
the birds to be there.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting, Dylan, because we do have volunteers who monitor the bird life on the railway land and have been doing for decades. But that has picked something up that that's never been recorded by them, as far as I know.
Fascinating.
So it shows that this method of monitoring is really powerful, doesn't it?
Wonderful. And you also, I think you definitely the only site as well that had all three, and before they started this project, I don't think I even knew there were 3 pipistrelle bats, but there are 3 species, one of which is quite uncommon still, Narthusius, and yeah, all 3 of them were recorded on a railway land, so that was really exciting.
Cool. Oh, Nightingales.
No, and I have to say, I think that like any piece of equipment, it works. I think there are some bird calls that are picked up more easily than others. I mean, nightingale you would expect, but we were talking earlier. Tim, obviously at the Super Campsite, he's got 3 pairs of nightingales. He was saying, but it really struggled to pick up on that song. Now, one thing we've got to bear in mind here is that every time it gets to night time, the monitors switch to recording bats. They're not recording birds. So any nightingale, they often sing a lot, 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. None of that will be picked up. It's only going to be able to pick them up when they're singing during the day. But most of the time, well, Tim, they do sing during the day quite a lot, don't they, at the Secret Campsite? Certainly.
Dylan, at what time do they switch then? Because it did pick up the nightjars, didn't it? So
that's a very good point, and lots of Tawny Owl recordings as well. So I'm not sure. I'd have to go back to Carbon Rewild, but it's a strange one, and I don't know if there's like a need to recalibrate or a timing issue. But the fact that it only records the bat echolocations for 2 hours a night, that's not very much, and I'm suspecting it's a limitation of the equipment, because if it could switch to do 5 or 6 hours, why not do that? So I'm wondering if there's a bit of time where it's maybe not recording anything, but I'm kind of guessing, and I will go back to Carbon Rewild and ask them that question.
Well, maybe it's doing birds at that time when it's not doing bats, because to record nearly 1,000 Tawny Owl chatters, they don't make noise during the day, so it's definitely recording birds at night, isn't it?
It definitely is. It definitely is at some point. By the way, I have to tell you guys, this is completely frivolous, but I put my bioacoustic monitoring device up. Day 1, I have a plumber come round, and he's doing some work outside. And I'm outside as well, and about halfway through the day, I hear a Tawny Owl. I'm thinking, it's a bit strange. They do sometimes call in the middle of the day, get disturbed. That's a bit odd. And then a couple of minutes later, cuckoo. What's going on? It's his ringtone. His ringtone is now affecting my bioacoustic monitoring device on day 1 of recording. Well, I had to say, hey, mate, do you mind switching your ringtone? Why? Well, so I explained to him. He's like, oh, I don't even know what that is, to be honest. I've had it like that. He didn't even know it was a bird, I don't think. So yeah, every piece of, every way of monitoring has its strengths and its weaknesses, I learned on day 1. Oh, dear. Millie and Jesse, how are you doing down there? Has it been useful for you guys?
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, and I guess useful long term to think about what we can do. But yeah, really, it's heartening to hear how many species there are around, and yeah, it's fascinating.
Oh, that's great. I must admit, when I put the monitoring devices up, I went to every single site, I think except yours actually, because I asked Brett to do it because he was doing some work for you, and I kind of felt like I wish all of you could have come with me, Because although I was kind of just blogging around all these different local places, it soon became really obvious just how different they were. And it's like, do you know what? For all of the kind of doom and gloom, this is just so lovely to go to all of these different places, big and small. Even if it was a little garden, it still had something, you know, really special about it. Because people are trying to do something positive for nature, and I found it a really kind of like heartwarming and positive experience just to go out and hang out in all these spaces while I put the boxes out. So yeah, that was great. We'll have to try and do it together at some point and visit more of the locations.
Maybe for the autumn one, you could do like if someone could be with you for just like 2 or 3 of us do it. Someone could be sort of managing like little videos and put like live social media posts, you know, and sort of so anyone could follow it throughout the day through like, you know, like a live feed on socials or something, just to try and bring the community into the sort of the install and that process of it.
It'd be fun to do some live recordings, wouldn't it? Some of these sites. Helen, when we were at the Railway Land, we actually put one up with a group of a teenage group, wasn't it, of students, which was nice to get them. Oh
yeah, and we introduced them to the Merlin app, didn't we?
Oh yeah.
Just while we were putting it up, had the Merlin app on, and they were gobsmacked, weren't they, at the number of species that we picked up?
It was great. Yeah, they were really excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we could share. It might be nice to share this video with that group actually, just so they can actually see, because it's so often in nature. Even if you're doing practical work, you don't necessarily get to see the results of your efforts. So this is a nice one where we can. Any other comments, questions?
So I've got a question about the data. Is it analysed by? You said you like to call someone and they re-listen to it. So is it manually analysed by someone listening to the recordings, or is it just put through the Merlin app or some other AI?
I think yeah. So it's from as I understand it, chatting to the guys at Carbon Rewild, it's a combination of AI. So I mean, obviously the actual recordings, they've taken the recordings. It goes through a heck of a lot of data. So as with the Merlin app, you know, some AI equipment is basically sorting through all of that. However, there can be errors. So, for example, I was going to mention this earlier. So at the Railway Land, when the data came back, it said that there were like quite a lot of recordings of red grouse. And I thought that's well, obviously that's impossible. There are no red grouse in Sussex at all. You know, it's a bird that lives up on the high moors, and Peak District's probably about as close to here as you get a red grouse. So I listened. I was like, I'm just going to listen to the call of a red grouse, and it's like this, and I thought, I know what this is. This is marsh frog. This must be marsh frog because there are lots of marsh frogs down on the Railway Land, aren't there, Helen? So it's obviously like taking a snippet of this marsh frog's call, and it thinks it's a red grouse. So I went back to Stefan and explained, and he was like, "You're right." He said, "But the AI should have picked that up because you're not in a geographical area of a red grouse. We made a mistake there." And he said, "You're right. It is marsh frogs." So I mean, I'm sure that the ability of the AI to cover all these gaps is improving all the time, but they basically take snippets of bird sounds and listen manually just to make sure that the records are accurate. And they also, I think they filter out. So, for example, Andy, in your garden, there was a bullfinch call, but they filtered it out because they just weren't sure. So anything that's a little bit distant or hazy that even get picked up by AI, but they're not entirely sure, they boot it out. So we probably slightly less species recorded than we actually had. I mean, for me in my garden that is still singing out there today, there's a lesser whitethroat. It's so loud. It's in the field next door. It sang all the way through April and May. It's still singing now. It didn't get picked up by the monitoring device once, but I actually am really pleased because the box was facing slightly away from that field deliberately. I wanted it to record just what's in the garden, And although I can sit in the back garden and hear that bird all the time, the box isn't picking that up. And I think that's great because it shows that it's more or less picking up 180 degrees in the position that you're facing it. So I think it's reasonably accurate. It's going to be a reasonable, accurate measure of the locations of our sites, whether they're large or small. So I think that's really encouraging. Sorry, James, you had a question or a comment?
Oh, I thought that was great. I really liked the ideas for management. Even as you say, you know, it's very early days. It's just a suggestion, but it's really cool actually. And I was also really puzzled by the gull decline. So I know you said during the course of this call, someone needs to post the reason why. I was looking around a little bit for that, and yeah, I did come across the BTO saying somewhere actually it's really notoriously hard to measure the population of urban gulls. So which made me think, like, well, work like this, you know, actually getting much more accurate, granular data of, you know, what kinds of gardens have what kinds of species actually and how they're doing over time is probably really important. You know, if we're not actually able to accurately measure something as big and obvious as a common gull in our towns and cities, that seemed like a really good clue as to why we need to do more of this. And there was one random and interesting comment by, I think, Nature Scotland, which is like they think maybe the reduction in fishing discards might have something to do with the gull decline. I don't know what that has to do with People's Park for Nature, but unintended consequences of good, probably useful changes in human behaviour. Yeah, that's something we can learn from that. So no, I thought it was great, Dylan. I really loved the stuff you put together, those little infographics on the bat diets, and yeah, the ideas for habitat management as well across the People's Park for Nature. Really cool. Would love to see the slides actually. I was trying to screenshot some of it. So will you share those separately as well as the recording?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thanks, James. And I guess from my perspective, I think it's also really worth mentioning how much enthusiasm there has been for this project. Lots of people have got, I mean, maybe it's slightly more geeky amongst us. It's not for everyone, but it's been really nice to run this project across the 10 sites. It's been lovely to engage with all of you guys and you know, some other people across the park, to get excited about it, and then to see the result. I mean, I was really, it was like Christmas when they actually, you know, when the results actually came back. Oh, what's in my garden? You know, it's really, really fantastic. And I think it'd be great to do more of that. I think Keith's garden in Lamport in Lewis, he put his monitoring box up on his wall. The next day, his neighbour came out and said, "What's that?" And so he explained, and she joined the People's Park for Nature just off the back of that. She was like, "I want one. This is going to be really interesting." So I think it's just one of like many tools, and but it's not just about the science and the value of that. It's also about our ability to tell more stories and to engage more people through this information. So hopefully, if everyone's still keen, we can run the next one. The plan is to run it from mid-September through to mid-October, which I think we'll see we'll get some quite different results. We can start actually comparing results from one season to the next. So hopefully you guys will be up for that, and we may even be able to get some new people involved in a bit of that.
So Dylan, is the idea in theory that you try to repeat it with the same sites, or you try to go for variety and you want some new ones? Are you using this as a snapshot, or is this the beginning of a a long survey approach? Yeah,
I think there's hopefully several benefits. One is that we hope it's been beneficial for all of the individuals and the organizations that are involved, because it's valuable information. I think monitoring data is incredibly helpful. It tells us so much. So hopefully, you know, for example, Chris, you at Lawton Greenwood, if you stay involved in the project, you know, you can access all of that data for that particular location. You might want to put some monitors up in different parts of the woods over time if finances allow. You can access that information independently. For us, we want to be able to, you know, the People's Park for Nature project from a nature perspective is all about how can we increase biodiversity? Can we work across our community to either maintain high levels of biodiversity in fantastic places like Tim's campsite with the wonderful Nightingales, or what can we do to build on that? And without data, we cannot really prove to anybody that we're being successful. So it's essential that I think we continue to try to do longer term monitoring over years, but we also have, I think, we really need to try to expand the monitoring that we do across more sites and across a diversity of sites as well. That comes with a cost. It's not the cheapest thing, but as AI is developing so quickly, hopefully those costs will come down, and that will enable us to kind of expand the work that we do and being able to share the data.
Brilliant.
Well, I'm aware that we're at 8:30. Thank you so much for joining us for an hour of your evening. It's wonderful to see you all. We'll share the recording, we'll share the presentation, and we'll hopefully see you all soon. But thanks so much for being involved in this project.
Thank you, Dylan.
Thanks,
Thank
Dylan.
you. Brilliant.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers, Em.
Catch
Thank
you
you.
soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.